Hello, and welcome to another episode of Navigating Christian Womanhood, where we talk about life and how to navigate through life as a Christian woman with God being our authority in all aspects of life. And today we're going to talk about health. The Bible tells us that we're to be good stewards of our body. And how do we do that in terms of how do we take care of our bodies? That's what we're going to talk about today. So do you ever find yourself making the same health resolutions year after year? And oftentimes a new year, it signifies, a new beginning, right? We look at it as a new beginning. So for some, this means setting health goals, whether it's eating healthier, a healthier diet, following a healthier diet, losing weight, starting an exercise routine. But we find that sometimes these things are hard to maintain. We make the commitment, we have really good intentions, but they're hard to maintain. And this is why people find themselves making these same commitments year after year after year. So to break that cycle, I think it's important to commit to a healthier lifestyle. So today, my guest is Suzanne Taddeo. Let me tell you about her. She's with Can Do Coaching. She's a registered dietitian and nutritionist. She is New York State certified with a master's degree in nutrition science. Hello, Suzanne.
Hello, Sonya. So good to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad to have you here. Now, the Bible tells us in 1 Corinthians 10:31 that whatever we do it all to the glory of God. And I think that this is a good place to start with any resolves in our lives.
Yes. I totally agree with you. Our bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit, and we're to take care of them, not worship them. I know there are some in the world today, there are people who take this to an extreme and almost worship their bodies. And as Christians, we don't want to do that. We do want to take care of our bodies within reason without going to that extreme. So it is important. The Bible tells us that physical training is of some value, but spiritual training is of more value. So we're not putting the physical, taking care of our bodies ahead of our spiritual lives, but we are making it something that we consider and think about and work on so that we can be as healthy as God wants us to be to do the tasks that he has for us.
And, you mentioned focusing, the Bible saying focusing, basically on our spiritual health. And I think that if that is the first commitment, then other things will follow.
Absolutely. And when we think about self-control, it is one of the fruit of the Spirit. Right. And self-control is needed, as we always talk about with any kind of commitment, whether that be a spiritual quiet time in the morning, whether that be exercise or eating right. It does take self-control. But the good news for us as believers is that as those who have the Holy Spirit, we know that we have the fruit of the Spirit. And one of those fruits is self-control. Yes. But we have to walk in that. And I know for me, I have to remind myself, I do have self-control. I do. And then walk in that self-control as opposed to the flesh control, which is the opposite of God's self-control.
Exactly. So tell our viewers just a few ways that they can make these changes in their life, not just gimmicky diets and things like that. What can they do to make a lifestyle change to be healthier?
Yes, and I like that. When we think about January, we think about resolutions. And so typically what I will do is I'll write down 10 things that I want to do. But that's too many. And so I have too many to focus on. So then none of them get done.
Exactly.
So I'm learning for myself and also for my clients to help them to do one thing at a time.
Right.
It seems to work better for most people to take one thing at a time. And then when that becomes habit, then we go to the next one.
Yes.
We tend to want to jump in all at once. I have a client whose doctor told her she needed to exercise. She started running, landed up with shin splints in both of her legs, and couldn't do anything for weeks. And that's kind of what many of us as Americans do. We have a good can-do attitude, but we jump in too much with both feet, literally, and land up hurting ourselves or land up overtaxing ourselves. So one of the other things that we do is that we think of resolutions as for the whole year. But really, a resolution is something that we do every day. When we wake up, we say, what have I resolved to do today?
Exactly.
And it really needs to be something that's always front and center. It's easy to make resolutions and then kind of put them away, and then we're not always being reminded. I need something I look at all the time to say, this is one of the things I've resolved to do every day. And for me, it won't become a habit unless I'm looking at that every day and reminding myself, this is something that I've resolved to do, right? And then it will become a habit. And once that has become a habit, then I move on to the next resolution, as opposed to trying to do everything at once. We tend to want to change a lot at one time. And I have clients who will say, I want you to tell me what to eat every day starting tomorrow. And I will say, no, let's start with breakfast. Start with breakfast. Let's see how your body handles it. Let's see how you handle it. Let's see how your time handles it. Because if we change everything at once, it usually doesn't go well. And then people say, this doesn't work. I'm not going to do any of it.
Right.
So it's just much more likely to be successful if we do things gradually and step by step.
So the first step would be to get it out of our head and put it down on paper. So
Absolutely.
We can see it. Okay.
Yes, definitely. So important. And I'm old fashioned. I'm aging myself, but I have to have things in writing as opposed to on my phone. Yes. Because if it's on my phone, I'm not looking at it all the time. I'm not looking at my notes on my phone. It has to be somewhere where I'm going to see it a lot in order for it to really get into my mind. Our minds are so important for everything about our lives, right? Our spiritual lives, our physical lives. Yes. Is what are we thinking about? And if we're thinking about these things that we want to change, we're much more likely to change them. But if they're out of sight, out of mind, then we're going to forget, oh yeah, I was supposed to be exercising every day this week and I didn't do it at all. It has to be front and center. I have sticky notes all over my house reminding me of things that I'm doing because I have to see them in order for them to get there. Yes.
So what would you say the second step would be? Okay, we have it on paper. We've decided the things that we want to change. What's the second step, you would say?
Start slow. So even with that thing, so a lot of people will think when I tell them I want them to exercise, they'll think that I'm telling them that they should exercise an hour every day. We have a mental idea that that's what's being asked of us. So I'll tell people 5 or 10 minutes a day, depending on their fitness level. Okay. And they will think, oh, that's not going to do any good. We tend to think that less is meaningless, but it isn't, because 5 minutes a day is way better than 0 minutes a day. So we start slow with whatever we're trying to do. When you're trying to eat more fiber in your diet, you don't just all of a sudden have way more fiber than you're used to. Your gut is not going to like that. So we start slowly and we change things one step at a time. So I would say take one resolution at a time and start that resolution slowly and let your body get adjusted to it and let your life get adjusted to it.
Right. So you'd mentioned in terms of exercise, right? I know for me, there was a time I'd say, well, if I don't have an hour to commit, then I don't do it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
You know, or that, and sometimes that's hard to maintain, and which makes it easier to fall off. So you're absolutely right. 5 to 10 minutes, even if that's all you have that particular day, it's a really good place to start, a good way to have it become a habit, have exercise become a habit for you.
Yes. Absolutely. And I think that is one of the myths that many people believe, is that 5 or 10 minutes of exercise is going to do no good at all. But that's an absolute lie, because every minute that we're exercising is better than no minutes. And it also is much more doable for most people's lives to do 10 minutes than to do an hour. Many of us will not be able to carve out an hour, especially when we're new to exercise.
You actually could do 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. It's cumulative, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's even better, Sonya. I'm glad you brought that up. A lot of the people that I work with, especially those who have diabetes, it's very important to exercise to burn off that extra sugar. Mm-hmm. It's actually better for a diabetic to exercise after every meal than to exercise 30 minutes at one time. So I prefer to see my diabetics do 10 minutes after breakfast, 10 minutes after lunch, 10 minutes after dinner, than to have them do 30 minutes, let's say, in the morning, because in that case, it's even better to do that. But it really, what works is what is going to work for you, is where and when. The other thing I talk to people about exercise is to hook it to something something that you already do. So none of us are going to say, oh, I forgot to brush my teeth this morning. You don't go to work and forget that. It's just something you do.
It's what you do.
And same thing with exercise. It's what we do. We don't say, oh, I forgot to brush my hair today, or I forgot to wash my face. It's just part of our life. And that's because of habit. It's become that over years and years of doing it. We wouldn't think of not doing it. We're trying to make exercise that kind of a thing that does not take conscious thought. We just do it. So the best time to exercise, if you can, is in the morning, because it's when you're doing all your other routines. You're taking your shower, you're getting dressed, you're having your quiet time. It just becomes part of your morning routine. Things that become part of something you're already doing are much more likely to stick. And some people say, I'm gonna do it before dinner time. The problem with that for most people is that it's one of the busiest times in our day. So it may not be a good time to do that. So you have to think, when can I do this that's going to fit with my life and is going to become part of my routine?
Absolutely. Now, in terms of eating healthy,
yes,
I think that some people may assume that they're eating healthy.
Yes.
And I don't know if people really understand what eating healthy looks like. So can you share with us, what does that look like?
Yes, it's a very good point that you brought up. We know that about 80% of Americans believe that they're eating healthy when we take surveys. But we know that probably about 10 to 20% of them actually are. And it's because we are all confused about what is healthy eating. We see so many different messages in the media. One of the things I tell my clients is, don't get your health information from the media. And that's because the media just wants you to watch or to click or to read. And so they're going to take any new study and they're going to make it the gospel truth. But what we want to look at is, what do the studies show for the last 10 years, looking at the preponderance of studies and the results of good studies? What do they show? And what we know now within our field, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the healthiest diets are plant-based diets. And plant-based diets does not mean plants only. It's not vegan. It means eating less animal products and more plants. So the typical American diet is very animal-based. So when we think about most meals for Americans, we have an animal protein at the center of that. So eggs and bacon at breakfast, turkey sandwich with cheese at lunch, chicken breast or a steak at dinner. So we tend to be focused on the animal protein as the center of the meal. So we have what we call the standard American diet, which I call the SAD diet, because it is an unhealthy diet. How do we know? Because Americans are not a very healthy bunch. And a lot of that has to do with our lifestyle, a lot of which is diet-based. So when we talk about eating healthier, it's always moving in the direction towards eating more whole food, plant-based foods. So that would be things as God made them. So fruits as they came off the tree, vegetables as they came out of the plant, right? Beans as they came off the bean plant, things that are natural and unprocessed. So when we think about a grain, for instance, we think about eating quinoa, which is a whole grain, as opposed to white rice, which is a refined grain. We think about eating an apple instead of apple juice. We think about eating steamed broccoli instead of broccoli casserole with cheese sauce, right? We try to get things as much as the way they were naturally made by God as we can. Those whole foods, whole plants are the highest nutrient foods. And when we think about food, we think about nutrients. So food is fuel. We also want to enjoy eating, and we want to eat things that we like. But we also have to think that food is a way that God gives us the nutrients that our body needs. Unfortunately, when we process food, I say when we mess with it, it messes with us. When we mess with food and strip things away and change it and heat it and cool it and freeze it, sometimes we are taking nutrients away from it. So this is why we try to eat things as close to their growth as possible. So it's better to eat an apple that was grown in New York State that we just picked ourselves than to eat an apple that came all the way from California, let's say, because some nutrients have been lost. So we're trying to eat things as fresh as we can and as close to the way God made them as we can. And by doing that, by taking a step in that direction, that is what's going to move us in that healthier direction diet-wise.
I think that it's easier to follow, as you mentioned, eating things the way that God made them. So that's easy to follow. Like an apple is an apple. I know what lettuce is, I know, but I think that some of the deception that could be out there is with processed foods, because we'll see things and they'll say, oh, well, this is low fat, right? Or this is, it's a low fat dressing, so it's healthier for me. And I think when some people think of making those changes, they think, I'll eat what I eat, I'll just do low fat. So I think it's easy to follow a diet, and I don't want to call it a diet, but a way of eating that is primarily plant-based, because there's no question of what you're eating. You don't have to wonder about the ingredients.
Yes, it's real food. And I always tell people, don't read the front of any kind of a label, because that's where all the promotions are, the propaganda, I call it. Low fat, low this, low that. Look at the ingredients. And if the ingredients are things that you recognize, they're whole foods, they're things that you know what they are, chances are that's going to be a healthier product. If there's chemicals in there, that means that it's been processed, it's been made shelf stable. And that's really where processing started back in the 1950s, was to make food more shelf stable, which is good because it allowed for more food to get to more people. Mm-hmm. But now we're eating processed food when we really don't need to, because we have so much access to fresh food in this country, fresh and frozen food that has been unprocessed and is healthy. In many parts of the world, they don't have the kind of access that we have in the United States to healthy food. So you want to take advantage of that, since God has blessed us with it.
Now, let me ask you, just briefly, touch on the keto diet, because that has become like all the rage. And a lot of people are following this way of eating. Yes. But it's also difficult to sustain as well.
Absolutely. So this has been going on for decades. Ever since I've been a dietitian, there has been some type of high protein, low carb diet. Different names, different packaging, but always the same thing. And always unhealthy. The reason that it's unhealthy is because the emphasis is on protein and fat, especially with the new packaging of the keto diet. People are looking to get into a condition called ketosis, which allows your body to burn fat and lose weight. And you do lose weight on the keto diet. But what I tell people is, I could also lose weight by cutting my arm off, but I wouldn't want to do that, right?
Right.
You want to lose weight in a healthy way. So we want whatever we're doing to lose weight, we want it to also be healthy for the rest of our body. And so this is my problem with keto. You do lose weight on keto if you do it right. But it is not a healthy way to lose weight, because it is giving you way too much protein and way too much fat. And both of those foods can be very difficult on other aspects of our health. Yes. Too much protein is not good for your kidneys. Too much fat is not good for your heart or your liver. So we want to lose weight in a way that's healthy for our body. And there's many ways to do that. And the best way is moving more toward a plant-based diet.
Now, Suzanne, I know that you do nutrition counseling, and we'll talk about that towards the end of the interview. Where can people go to learn more about eating plant-based? Do you have any books or that you would recommend, or websites?
Absolutely. Yes. So the books that I use with my clients are by a Dr. Joel Furman out of New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And I like Dr. Furman. He's a medical doctor, and he is a proponent of a whole food plant-based diet. He calls it the nutritarian diet, meaning that we're focusing on nutrients. And as a dietitian, that is my most compelling reason to do what I do, which is to help people get more nutrients in their diet. Dr. Furman has many books out there. The one that I like the best is called Eat to Live. Okay. And it's talking all about why a plant-based diet is healthy for everyone and how to do it. It's the book that I use with my clients, and it's one that is also written for lay people. It is not difficult to read or understand for someone who doesn't have a science background. And it's very compelling. and well written, well done, and very scientifically accurate and nutritionally accurate.
For the person who says, okay, so I need to eat more plants,
Yes.
but I don't want to give up my meat. For that person, what would you suggest?
Absolutely. What I would say is you don't have to. The good news about eating this way is it's whole food plant based, not whole food plants only.
Okay.
This is not vegan. So for someone, for instance, who's used to having meat or animal products at every meal, we would start with one meal and start to limit it. So let's say they're having eggs every day. Then we would start with, let's try to go to eggs every other day. If they're having a turkey sandwich every day for lunch, then we may say, let's have a meat sandwich less often and move towards more plant-based options. So I will encourage people to find things, and have lots of ideas of things that they can try that they might like just as well, and that are going to be healthier for them. One of the things I encourage for dinner is something I call the meat plate, is that when you do want to have meat, and many people want to still have meat for dinner, is instead of having half your plate filled with meat, which is what a typical American will do, like a 4 to 5 ounce piece of meat.
Right.
We think about a dinner plate, we think about half of that's meat and maybe half of that's potatoes, right? And
Right.
maybe you have a little salad on the side. I'll encourage people to divide that plate into quarters, and the meat is in 1/4, 2 to 3 ounces of meat, as opposed to 5 or 6 ounces of meat. And then fill half that plate with a cooked vegetable that you like, a green vegetable or a colorful vegetable, carrots or broccoli, cauliflower, onion and peppers, whatever you like. And then the other quarter can be a grain. So that is a healthy dinner plate. If you're going to have meat, small amounts of meat. So we have little bits instead of huge amounts. We talk about using meat and animal products as condiments instead of the center of the plate. So a lot of times people will, I encourage people to have a chili, let's say, and it will have some beans in it, and we'll have a little bit of meat, but it won't be a totally meat-based chili.
Right.
Or we'll have a soup that isn't all lots of chicken, just a little bit less chicken. But we just moving in the right direction can make a big, big difference. We realize too that we don't need as much meat as we tend to eat as Americans. We definitely don't need it. We eat about twice the protein that we need in America. And we're saving money as well, because meat is one of the most expensive items on our shopping list. So by cutting down on our meat, we're actually saving money as well, and saving our health.
Absolutely. So again, as I mentioned earlier, Suzanne, you do nutrition coaching. And can you tell us your website?
Yes, candocoaching.net. They can go there. It explains what I do and how I help people. There are some testimonials there. And they can reach out to me there as well if they're interested. One of the things that some people need is that accountability and support. There are some people who will make a commitment and they'll just do it on their own. They don't need that help. But most of us, including me, when it's something I'm trying to do that I'm not naturally good at, I need someone to hold my hand. I need someone to encourage me on and to say, good job. And people will tell me that I'm their cheerleader. I never made cheerleading in high school, but I like to cheerlead with what I do with my coaching. Is every small success, we cheer it on and we congratulate and we celebrate every step in the right direction, as opposed to, you didn't do enough. That wasn't enough. You're not good enough, right? And those are the message that the world sends.
Yes.
But every step in the right direction is to be celebrated, especially when it comes to our health and doing something that's difficult for a lot of people.
And I think the benefits with the exercising and, transitioning to a primarily plant-based diet, if not a, total plant-based diet, is that there are many health benefits. It's not just losing the weight. There's the lowering, I was looking at your website, there's the lowering of your cholesterol and your triglycerides and, your blood pressure. So all of those things are benefits. I think if we focus on being healthy and not so much the weight will come off if we focus on being healthy.
Very good. That's what I tell people, Sonya, exactly what you just said. We'll focus on a healthy way of eating and a healthy way of living, and the weight will follow. The weight, a healthy person will come naturally towards a healthy weight. The other thing about weight is that every pound that people lose is going in the right direction. People say, oh, I only lost 5 pounds this month. And I'll say, no, you lost 5 pounds this month.
Yeah.
That's huge. Just like the 5 minutes of exercise feels like nothing to them, 5 pounds feels like nothing, but it's not true. That is a lie. 5 pounds is huge. Every pound you lose and keep off is so good for your body. One of the things I try to encourage people to do to help with this is to buy a bag of potatoes. So you can get a 5-pound bag of potatoes, right?
Right.
When I carry that up my stairs, that's a lot of weight. I will say to people, you think 5 pounds is little? Pick up your 5 pounds of potatoes and go up and down the stairs with it. And you'll realize the benefit of losing those 5 pounds to your knees, to your hips, to your heart, right? We're not carrying all this up and down all the time. So 5 pounds makes a big difference. But you're right. We focus on healthy eating and healthy living, and the weight will follow.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Suzanne, for all of these tips. These are all ways that we can honor this temple that God has given us. And like you said, not worship it, but to honor it. Again, Suzanne Taddeo, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Sonya.